warm and pleasant good morning to you all.
Good morning.
It is indeed my pleasure to be presenting to you today my research, my action research, under the topic, using conferencing to improve creative writing. My name is Jason Scott and I'll be your presenter. Now when we look at the topic, conferencing, and we see creative writing, we may ask ourselves, why choose that topic? Now I have identified a strength in my students, which is conversation, talking, informally or formally. And I've also identified a weakness that they have, which is writing, creative writing in this sense. Now I decided to infuse both to see where I can use or create a learning environment which can be positive in molding the minds of my students. Now the rationale behind this research. Student competence in communication tasks at the grade 6 level. Observe trends in GSAT results. Now I may combine these and say, I have observed over the course of 5 years that my students tend to perform lowest in language arts when it came on to the GSAT results. And this I see stemming from also their performance at the communication task subject here as well. So I decided therefore that I'm going to put into play an action to curb this slide or to see where I can correct this trend. Also, students' love of conversation and informal activities. I don't know in your case, but I know in mine. As soon as I enter the classroom, students are talking. While they're on the corridors, they're talking. At break, they're talking. Wherever they are, you find them in conversation, sharing ideas, quarreling, debating, you name it. And out of this, we can see where this love for conversation can be used or can be held in such a way where we get the positives out of it. Now, honing. Honing is sharpening. Sharpening of a skill. And to sharpen or to hone creativity is to do it in a structured way. In conferencing as a teacher, I am more of a coach, a cognitive coach, instead of an instruction giver. Now when we say hone their creativity, we mean using the creativity that they have in a positive way. And as a coach, how is this done? Let us take, for example, that example of one of our most famous athletes, Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt was born a talented child or a talented person. However, his coach was able to hone his creative talent and to put it to good use. He did not instill the talent in him, but he was able to mold him, to put him in such a situation where you got the best out of him. Now, allowing students to take responsibility for their own learning is also a desire of this research. According to Daniels and Zemmelman, 2008, the ultimate aim of education is for students to take responsibility for their own learning. In a position where my education, my learning, my know-how matters to me. Major terms. Conferences. Daniels and Zemmelman, 1998, define conferences as workshop-style scenarios which facilitate thought, monitoring of work, evaluation of products, and the sustaining of efforts. Conferences, they further argue, take more than one form. And the strength of conferences is not in one particular conference, but in a combination of different conferences, which we'll get into as the presentation goes on. Creative writing. Creative writing, this involves putting your ideas and your feelings about a topic on paper by using your imagination freely. And this was positive by Temisman, 2011. Then we have creative thinking. Now this is thinking which focuses on exploring ideas, generating possibilities, looking for many right answers rather than just one. And Hale 2008 added, there is no creative process if there is not thought behind it. So it's out of creative thinking that creative writing will emerge. Creative thinking activity. Each person was presented with a blank sheet of paper. We're going to proceed to a simple activity that I want you to think about before you even attempt it. And it says, we're going to cut a cake into 8 pieces using no more than 3 cuts. So I want you to draw a circle. And we're going to imagine, since we're looking at creativity, that circle to be a cake. So let's draw a circle on it. Now you're going to use your pen or pencil, whatever it is that you're using, to make 3 marks or 3 cuts and get 8 slices out of that. I want you to attempt it. So it's 3 continuous markings to give you 8 slices. 3 cuts. Now in the interest of time, I want you to look at what persons have come up with. We see in the first image, that same circle was cut into 1 line down, 1 across, and then a circle around it. And we have 8 slices out of that. The second one, a line across and 2 curved lines. And we still get 8 slices if you were to count them. And the third one, just utilize 2 lines. One straight down and the other one forming a zigzag pattern. It's continuous, it never stops. And if we look carefully, you'll still get 8 out of it. Now looking at the third diagram, nobody would want that slice in the middle, I'm sure. However, it's still a slice. And the activity had asked to cut it into 8 slices. So what really is happening here, as HALE 2008 says, when we look into creativity, creativity is about thinking outside the box. Or as Smith, 1984 stated, thinking within the box, however expanding what that box entails. So in our minds, speaking for myself in particular, the way I see a cake being cut is a slice that is almost triangular in shape, because that's what I'm used to all the time. So in the norm of things, I would be trying to draw it in such a way where I can get 8 slices looking like that. But a creative thinker thinks outside the box or expands the thought within that box and will get a shape like that or a pattern. Now, creative thinking activity 2, which is much simpler, so we can all attempt this. And this is where now I'm going to link what creativity is, creative thought is, with what conferencing is desired to give. From the essay topic, A Day at the Beach, I would like you just to close your eyes for 10 seconds. Just close your eyes. Now, a day at the beach, what do you see? What do you hear? Where would you want to go? Who is next to you? What do you smell? What is around you? What is behind you? Open your eyes. I want you to write down 3 things that you saw at the beach. Just 3. Or think about 3 things. And then we're going to share. A volunteer. Give me one. What did you see?
People. Crystal clear water.
Crystal clear water. People.
Sand.
Sand.
Horse.
Trees.
Towels.
Towels. How many persons saw towels? Good. So somebody came up with something.
Rock.
What else do we see? Rocks.
Birds.
Birds.
Lifeguard.
A lifeguard. How many of you saw a lifeguard? Now that's the objective of conferencing. Grouping students in a particular way where they share ideas on a topic. If we are going to do creative thinking and we're going to do a day at the beach as an essay topic, I put 4 students together. They're going to come up with 4 with 4 different views as to what this topic can entail. And what is the benefit of that? I was about to write about it. If I was depending on my own creativity, I would have written about a particular thing. Now I'm hearing the ideas of somebody else, and right away I'm saying to myself, I can add this to it. That's what the conferencing approach is all about. Gathering ideas and thoughts, sharing these ideas and thoughts to build on our banks of creativity. The creativity is there. Some of the times it just needs to be tapped into. Robson, 2004, stated that any creative idea that is around was actually, or did not actually, come out of thin air. It wasn't born out of thin air. It was actually a development on an idea that was there before. Do we query that? Yes, we can. But does it have any value or any weight? Let's take, for example, the cell phone was born out of the land phone. So it was building on a creative process that brought us there. As the years progress, another mind is going to come up with something. Because Leonardo da Vinci, the great thinker, said, whatever is thought about can be creative. Background to the study. I teach a group of 48 mixed ability students in grade 6 who had difficulty producing written work in communication tasks to match the standards required for success in the grade 6 achievement test. The reading levels of these students, as indicated by the Sloss oral reading test, presented a range from below grade 1 to grade 9, showing a wide gap in reading abilities which impacted their ability to comprehend instructions and also restricted them in one way or another from writing fluently in standard Jamaican English. Now let's take a pictorial look at this. The classroom has 48 students at the mixed ability. I'm going to issue instructions on writing. We looked at a day at the beach just now. I'm going to give 48 students an essay to write. Because yes, they're at grade 6. GSAT is in a matter of months. All 48 of you need to write an essay about a day at the beach. If we look carefully at the results, we see that one child is reading at the primer level. Now, if we are familiar with this, Slosson's oral reading test, we would know that the primer level has to do with words like is, run, baby, come, little. That's the primer level. This child is not at the grade 1. And the grade 1 level has words like wish, puppy, live, what, with. And they don't know those words. They're in the same class. I'm giving the same instruction. I can scroll all the way down now to where we see 2 students at the grade 9 level. This child or these children, they're in the same class. What are the words that they know? Futility, auspicious, chastisement, traverse, pandemonium, sojourn, and the list goes on. So right away, in my mind, I saw where it could not carry on in the same way as we have been doing it all along. What then did I do? Implementation plan. The implementation plan was to use different types of conferences, such as process conferences, read aloud conferences, small group conferences, peer conferences, and one-on-one editing conferences. Now you may ask, what are these? We're hearing terms, probably we're hearing for the first time, but they're not as difficult as some might sound. A process conference. The activity we did just now on the second one, that's a process conference. All I did was, instead of going into what, I didn't come to you to tell you exactly what to write. I prompted you with some questions. I did not need to come and pick up your paper. I did not need to say, write this, write that. I prompted you, what do you see? What do you hear? Because the objective is to make you the one to give me from your bank of creativity, your imagination, and that is the way you are going to take responsibility for your own learning, and that's the way you're going to grow. We can go across, read aloud conference. A child will stand and read a chunk of his or her work. Now, I'll explain the rest further as we get further into the presentation. Ethical considerations. The principal was informed about the study. He was briefed on the purpose and the intent of the study and his permission sought for conducting research. And he readily accepted the idea, he bought into it, he gave permission. I then informed my main subjects, the student participants, about the study, handed them the permission slips to give to their parents, and surprisingly, they were expediently returned. I sought the permission of the parents and guardians for their child or ward to participate in the study. Now, surprisingly or not, all 48 students brought back responses. I feel lucky, but I also saw where it was a benefit of the timing, because they're at grade 6. GSAT is in a matter of months. Every mother or child, every parent or guardian wants to see teacher, because everybody wants to go to this school or that. So I use that opportunity when a parent come in and say, this is happening, can you sign off on this? And we know how it goes when somebody wants something from you. They readily accept what you're selling. So right away, I gained their support for the study. Research questions. The central research question was, how can conferencing improve creative writing? Now, creative writing is a brand of language arts. I'm not trying to solve all their language arts woes, but I'm trying to solve the problem of creative writing, problem that they have with it. Out of this came 3 sub-questions. First, how can sharing ideas in groups influence creative thinking? We just had a demonstration of that. We're in groups. How can this influence your creative thought process? It can help to build your band, in summary. Second, in what ways can conferencing develop grammatical skills to improve creative writing? There is no writing unless the skill to write is there. And 3, can conferencing foster growth and development in creative writing? The objective is to have growth. Children need to be moving from one level to the next. And how can conferencing process foster this growth? Data collection instruments that I used. Checklists. Checklists were used throughout the research to guide me to ensure that I was on the right path each time. Each conferencing type that I had planned on using, the checklist was there. Each strategy that I wanted to implement, the checklist was there to mark that. Student portfolios. This gave me the body, the base of what the conferencing approach was going to give. It is out of these student portfolios, or in these student portfolios, the students inserted entrance and exit slip activities, long writing or short writing, development of paragraphs, development of sentences, poems, stories, and so on were entered into their portfolios. Free writing journals. Now, free writing journals were used to allow students to take more interest in writing. They were told at the start that these free writing journals were ungraded. So each student was given a notebook. They took it for themselves, each of them, they personalized it their own way. And from time to time, I gave them instructions as to what to write, not specifically what to write, because remember now, we're doing creative thinking. And Foster 2002 said, creative thinking cannot be limited. It would not be creative if I'm going to tell you exactly what it is you must put. However, I gave them a parameter around which to work. Grade comparisons. I compared the grades that they received at the beginning of the study and throughout the study into the end. Audio recordings. While the conferences were going on, what I did was to have, if I'm having a group, think of it, 48 students. If I divide them up into groups of 4, I have a number of groups. Because some students would be on one side, they will be all across the classroom. How do I know what is happening? in each of these conferences. The audio tape recorder was placed or moved around from time to time so that at the end of the day, when I'm making my field observation notes, I can record what I had heard going on during the conferences. Photographs were taken, and also group and individual projects. Group and individual projects included things like plenary walks, debates. How does this relate to creative writing? We're trying to build, or I was trying to build your banks of ideas. So any possible way, informally or formally, I could find, I would infuse into the conferences to get the children to start thinking creatively and to express themselves creatively. Interviews were conducted and they were informal. And the opinions of an independent observer who I asked to come in at 3 different times within the year to give me feedback or to validate my research. So this independent observer came at the start to help me or to validate my assumptions about the children. Came midway to see if there was growth or there was development, and came at the end now to give me a summary or a synopsis of what had taken place. What did I find? Were my findings in line with what the observer gave? And we'll see more of that when I start looking at findings. So the timeline, checklists were weekly, grade comparisons were in the first week. Audio recordings were ongoing during the conferences. Field observations continuous. Projects weekly. Photographs continuous. Interviews. And the independent observer, the 3 different, and the dates are there. And the free writing journals, as best as possible, were done on a weekly basis. Now you might ask, children are writing. How am I going to be marking all of this body of work from 48 students? This is where the conferencing becomes so much important. Because I can have you in a group of 6, and all 6 of you together are going to produce or turn in one sample work. So I'm reducing my workload. However, what you had to say was voiced in what you did. Findings. The conferences fostered collaborative learning among students, and is aided in critical development of a skill that is profoundly intrinsic. Creativity is intrinsic. You cannot be taught that. However, as I had said before, it can be sharpened. Now, Hale 2008 advocated that this skill of creative writing is grounded in creative thought and is based on ideas. Student interactions in small groups and large groups, interaction with the teacher, and the bodies of work submitted during the course of the study provided a wealth of evidence to support the literature. Now, let's look specifically at the conferences and the types of conferences. Small group conferences. Now, small group conferences comprise of groups of 4, maximum 5, and only in the event of the students being an uneven number. When all 48 were there were no problems because I could put them in groups of 4. However, sometimes the groups had to go to 5, occasionally to 3. Now, what resulted from small group conferences? Brainstorming exercises, sharing of ideas, and the development of points, conflicts from time to time, and the deciphering of opinions. Now, earlier I told you about the free writing journals. Now, I told children about the study, so they knew exactly what the study was about. They were exposed to conferencing, and I told them that I would be presenting at a conference. So they were curious now, what type of conference are you going to be? Is it a small group conference? Or so on. So I had to explain to them that it's a conference nonetheless, however the format is a bit different. Now I got permission from a few of them that I could read what they had. Now in writing about group conferencing, this is what one girl had to say. I like group conferencing because it makes you combine your ideas with others, which will allow you to have a better paragraph or develop your stories or essays. That's what I tried to say about conferences. While at the same time, another student gave the response about conferences. I don't like my group members doing conferencing because they don't like to give me money whenever I do the work for them. So right away, we see that students in free writing, because that was the aim anyway. I told them these are your ideas. I'm not grading you for them. Be as truthful as you wish, write what you wish. But in writing about conference, that's what she said. Ironically, she was one of the students who said, "Sir, you sure you're not going to grade them?" Because she knew what she would be writing. Then we have grade-alike group conferences. And it is out of this I also developed what? I also infused into my research differentiated instruction. At the start I told you that the Slosson's oral reading test had already showed that there's a huge separation, a huge gap in the abilities of the students. Grade-alike group conferences. This allows students to work at a similar pace with other students who were at their level. Two things I observed from this. One, some students were now more comfortable because they were working in a group with students who were working at their pace, so there was no pressure on them to try to outperform, or they did not feel pressured to say, "I don't know because the brighter person is in my group, so what I'm going to say don't make sense." At the same time, this morning or earlier, we had listened to our JTA president who spoke about not tapping into the talents of the students who are at the higher end of the education system, their levels. So when you put those kind of students together, we find that they are going to produce work at a much different level. And that's what we want, to push them to their maximum. So it's almost like a competition. But there's still a negative spin to that, because we know now, I know, you know what's going to happen. We're going to have clashes and we're going to have arguments. But that was the nature of it. We wanted to get the best out of them, and we wanted them to develop and to be as creative as they were. Read aloud conferences. I made mention of it just slightly earlier. Students were encouraged to stand and read just a chunk of their work. Remember, you will not be able to mark every single piece of work that the students do. However, some students were encouraged to stand and just to read a paragraph, either their introduction, their conclusion, or just to give a summary of the work that they had done. One-on-one editing conferences. Now, the nature of editing conferences emphasize proofreading in an intimate setting between teacher and student, where the interference or distraction of the other students are not present. Now, you might ask, I'm in a classroom of roughly this size, 48 students. How would I find, or how would I be able to get a setting like this one? It is emphasized in one-on-one conferencing sessions that the teacher assumes the role of a coach and a mentor rather than an instruction giver. So you now have to put a table at the back of the classroom. The student does not come up to your table anymore to stand in front of you, but sit alongside you in a situation or in an environment that is free of the inferiority-superiority complex.